February is the month that determines whether you eat from your garden in May or wait until July like everyone else. While your neighbors are still browsing seed catalogs and planning their spring gardens, you could be planting 20 crops right now that will feed your family 2 to 3 months before anyone else even breaks ground. And the difference between planting in February versus waiting until April is just a few weeks of earlier harvest. It's the difference between abundance and scarcity, between walking past your grocery stores for dollars tomatoes and picking your own in early summer, between depending on a food system that charges more every year and building your own supply that costs pennies per pound. Here are the 20 most productive crops you must plant in February before spring arrives and it's too late. Number 1. Broad beans. Broad beans planted in February will survive the last frosts of winter and produce a massive crop of fresh beans in late May or early June, when absolutely nothing else is ready to harvest yet. And while most people wait until March or April to plant beans, February planted broad beans develop stronger root systems during the cool weather, which means they produce earlier and heavier than anything planted later. Sow seeds 2 inches deep and 6 inches apart in double rows, or if your soil is still too frozen or waterlogged. Start them in deep pots in a cold frame or unheated greenhouse and transplant them out as soon as the ground is workable. And here's what makes broad beans so valuable for February planting. They can handle temperatures down to 10 degrees Fahrenheit, which means even if you get a late winter storm after planting, your beans will survive and keep growing as soon as the weather warms up again. Number 2. Peas. Early peas sown in February will be ready to harvest in May, giving you sweet, tender peas straight from the vine weeks before summer really starts. And the secret to February pea planting is protection. If you can give them a cloche or cold frame, or even just a layer of fleece over the bed, they'll germinate and grow through the coldest part of late winter. Sow seeds 2 inches deep and 2 inches apart in double rows, or scatter them 6 inches apart across a bed if you're using the deep bed method. Provide support for them to climb, because even dwarf varieties produce better when they have something to grab onto. And protect the seeds from mice by soaking them in kerosene or paraffin before planting, which doesn't harm the seeds, but mice absolutely hate the smell and will leave them alone. Number 3. Onions. Onion seeds started indoors in February will produce big, storage-quality bulbs by late summer that will feed you through the entire following winter. And starting from seed instead of buying onion sets means you get bigger bulbs that store longer and cost a fraction of the price. So seeds indoors in seed trays filled with good potting mix. Keep them around 65 degrees near a window, and when the seedlings reach about ½ inch tall, with their second leaf showing, prick them out into another tray, spacing them 2 inches apart. Then harden them off gradually in early spring and transplant them outside as soon as the soil is workable, which in most climates is late March or early April. Number 4. Leeks. Leeks started in February will grow thick as your arm by fall and will stand in the garden through winter, providing fresh vegetables when almost nothing else is available. The process is identical to onions, so indoors, keep warm and moist, prick out when large enough, transplant outside when weather permits. But leeks need deeper planting than onions because you're growing them for the long white shaft, not a bulb. So when you transplant, make a deep hole with a dibber, drop the leek seedling in, and just water it without filling the hole with soil. The water carries soil down around the roots, and the hole gradually fills in as the leek grows, which is what creates that long white stem. Number 5. Early cabbage. Cabbage started in February will be ready to harvest in June or July, filling the gap between spring greens and summer vegetables. Sow seeds in flats or cell trays indoors. Keep them warm until they germinate, then move them to a cold frame or unheated greenhouse as they grow. Transplant outside in early spring, spacing them 18 inches apart in soil that's been enriched with compost. And the key with early cabbage is never letting them stop growing, because any check in their development causes them to form small, loose heads instead of the large, dense ones you want. Number 6. Cauliflower. Cauliflower sown in February will produce heads in early summer. And while cauliflower has a reputation for being difficult, the secret is simply starting it at the right time and never letting it experience stress. Sow seeds indoors, prick them out into individual cells or small pots, keep them growing steadily in a cold frame, and transplant them outside when they're large enough to handle, spacing them 18 inches apart in rich, well-manured soil. And here's the trick that most people miss. Sow more seeds every 2 to 3 weeks through February and March so you have a continuous supply rather than 20 cauliflowers all ready at once. Number 7. Lettuce. Winter lettuce varieties sown in February in an unheated greenhouse or under close will provide fresh salads in April and May when store-bought lettuce costs a fortune. Sow seeds thinly in rows or broadcast across a bed. Barely cover them because lettuce needs light to germinate. Keep the soil moist but not waterlogged, and thin seedlings to 6 inches apart. Or harvest them as baby greens and let the remaining plants fill the gaps. And unlike summer lettuce, which bolts in hot weather, winter varieties are bred to tolerate cold and grow slowly but steadily through late winter and early spring. Number 8. Spinach. Spinach sown in February will be ready to harvest in April, and it's one of the most cold-hardy vegetables you can grow. Sow seeds half an inch deep in rows or broadcast across a bed, thin to 4 inches apart, and harvest by cutting outer leaves while letting the center continue growing. And here's why spinach matters more than lettuce. It's packed with iron, vitamins, and minerals, making it one of the most nutritious vegetables in your garden, not just a base for salad. Number 9. Kale. Kale started indoors in February can go outside in March or April and will provide continuous harvests from late spring through the following winter. Because kale tolerates heat, cold, poor soil, and neglect better than almost any other vegetable. Start seeds in pots or trays, transplant outside when they're 4 to 6 inches tall, space them 18 inches apart, and harvest by cutting outer leaves while the center keeps growing. Number 10. Early potatoes. February is the time to chit your early potato varieties, which means placing seed potatoes in shallow trays or egg cartons in a bright, frost-free location where they'll develop short, sturdy sprouts. Choose certified disease-free seed potatoes, place them with the end that has most eyes facing up, keep them in bright light but never direct sun, and maintain temperatures around 50 degrees. In 6 to 8 weeks they'll have strong green or purple sprouts about an inch long, ready to plant outside as soon as the soil is workable. And chitting gives your potatoes a head start of several weeks, resulting in harvests in June or July instead of August. Number 11. Shallots. Shallot bulbs planted in February will multiply into clusters of 6 to 12 bulbs by midsummer, and they store even better than onions, often keeping for a full year. Plant individual bulbs 6 inches apart, barely covering them so the tips are still visible, and they'll grow through spring and summer. Then harvest when the tops die back, cure them like garlic, and store in a cool, dry place. And here's why shallots are essential. They have a milder, sweeter flavor than onions, perfect for cooking, and they're more productive per square foot than almost any other allium. Number 12. Garlic. If you miss the fall planting window, February is your last chance in most climates to get garlic in the ground for a summer harvest. Break apart a bulb into individual cloves, plant them to inches deep, and 6 inches apart with the pointed end up, mulch heavily with straw or leaves, and let them grow through spring. They won't produce bulbs as large as fall-planted garlic, but you'll still get a decent crop that stores for months. Number 13. Tomatoes. The first week of February is the perfect time to start tomatoes indoors if you have a greenhouse or very sunny window, because tomatoes need 8 to 10 weeks of indoor growing before they can go outside after the last frost. Sow seeds in small pots filled with seed starting mix. Keep them at 70 degrees during the day and 65 at night. Provide maximum light, and when seedlings develop their first true leaves, transplant into individual 4-inch pots. Then gradually harden them off in late spring before moving to the garden where they lions produce from July through October. Number 14. Peppers. Peppers need even longer than tomatoes, which makes February essential for getting a good harvest. So in small pots or cell trays, keep them very warm at 75 to 80 degrees. Because peppers won't germinate in cool soil, provide maximum light once they sprout, and transplant into larger pots as they grow. Do and rush to put them outside because peppers are extremely sensitive to cold and will sulk for weeks if exposed to temperatures below 50 degrees. Number 15. Eggplant. Eggplant has the same requirements as peppers, but is even more heat-loving and slow-growing, which means starting in February gives you the best chance of getting fruit before fall frosts. The process is identical to peppers, so in pots, keep very warm, provide maximum light, transplant into larger containers as needed, and wait until soil is thoroughly warm before transplanting outside. Number 16. Celery. Celery started in February will be ready for harvest in late summer and fall. So seeds indoors barely covering them because they need light to germinate. Keep at 70 degrees and be patient because celery takes up to 3 weeks to germinate. Prick out seedlings into individual pots when large enough. Harden off gradually and transplant outside in late spring into trenches filled with compost and manure. And here's the secret to growing celery. It's essentially a marsh plant that needs more water and fertility than almost any other garden vegetable. Number 17. Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts started in February will produce from October through January, providing fresh vegetables in the depths of winter. So indoors in cell trays, transplant into larger pots as they grow, and move outside in April or May, spacing them to feet apart. And the key with Brussels sprouts is that they need a long growing season to develop properly, which is why February starting is essential. Number 18. Parsnips. Parsnips sown directly in the ground in February will be ready to harvest from October onwards, and they actually improve in flavor after being touched by frost. So seeds half an inch deep in rows, thin to 4 inches apart, and leave them in the ground through winter, harvesting as needed. And here's what makes parsnips so valuable. They store perfectly in the ground, staying fresh and sweet until you're ready to dig them. Number 19. Carrots. Early carrot varieties sown in February under cloches or in cold frames will be ready to pull in May or June. So thinly in shallow drills, barely cover with soil, keep moist until germination, and then 2 inches apart. And early carrots are sweeter and more tender than main crop varieties planted later, making them worth the effort of protection. Number 20. Radishes. Radishes sown in February under protection will be ready to harvest in just 4 weeks, making them the fastest crop you can grow. So seeds half an inch deep and 1 inch apart. Keep soil moist and pull them as soon as they re-ready because radishes that sit too long become woody and hot. And here's why radishes matter in February. They're the first fresh vegetable you'll harvest, proving that your garden is producing when everyone else is still waiting for spring. These 20 crops represent the foundation of a productive garden that starts feeding you in May instead of July. And the critical insight most gardeners miss is that February isn't a month for waiting. It's a month for planting, because every week you delay costs you weeks of growing time, and in gardening time is the one resource you can never get back. The gardeners who succeed are the ones who understand that the growing season doesn't start when the weather gets warm. It starts in February when you're sowing seeds indoors while frost is still on the ground, when you're chitting potatoes in a shed while your neighbors are watching television, when you're replanting broad beans and peas outside while everyone else is looking at seed catalogs and dreaming about summer. February is the month that separates gardeners who talk about self-sufficiency from gardeners who actually achieve it. And if you plant these 20 crops now, you'll be harvesting fresh vegetables in May while everyone else is just starting to plant.